how to use wholesaling to bolster your buy and hold portfolio. That's today's show. Let's dive into it. Here we are at our very first rental property. Hey everyone, I'm Clayton Morris, longtime real estate investor. Welcome to the show. If you are new here, this is the show where we help you build financial intelligence first so that you can build financial freedom second. You need to do that first one in that order. You can't just jump right to the strategy and tactics. However, today we're going to be talking strategy and tactics with a friend who's joining us today. We've got a great interview with Lance Wakefield. He's a real estate wholesaler in the Dallas area. He's been crushing it there for years. And he uses wholesaling, just like I have over the years, to build a buy and hold portfolio. He has some great numbers and can really dive into some of the finance aspects of this as well. Lance, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And I know you've got some stuff in the background there. If you're watching the video version of this, we see is that a wakeboard or a surfboard?
It's like a paddleboard.
A paddleboard. Yeah. And I've got, I've asked my son to remove these. He still hasn't done it. But he has the Iron Man Hulkbuster armor character hanging from the rafters. And then he's got Spider-Man and another Iron Man hanging down here. So I keep thinking in my head. Yeah. So hey, that's when you have an 8-year-old boy. That's what happens. So tell me about your story, man. You're down there in Dallas. Tell me how you got started in real estate investing, and we'll dive into some buy and hold strategies today.
Yeah. So I'll kind of make it brief so that we don't get too heavy into it. But I used to be in the used car business, like the tote the note kind of car dealers, buy here, pay here stuff. I was doing that for several years when I was in my young 20s. I didn't feel like I had the money to do real estate. So I thought cars were more manageable. You know, you can pick up a car for a couple grand. I didn't think you could pick up a house for that. I know better now, but I didn't then. And so I got in the car business. I was doing that until I was about 26. And when I was 26, about 27, it was about 5 years ago. Just a lot of bad stuff happened in my life. My brother passed away, got divorced, lost my businesses. Everything just kind of went sideways. And so I kind of had to regroup and figure out, what I wanted to do. And I had always wanted to be in real estate. And when I was 21, I bought a home and had rented it out to friends while I was going to college. And that paid for my living. It paid me money every month. I got equity in the home. It was a great investment. And so I was like, I should do more of that. So I thought I would flip homes, and a friend of mine, his house had he bought it during the Obama $7,500 to buy a home. And they're trying to get the market going back in the early 2010, 11, and so he bought a home. He got halfway through the flip, couldn't finish it, and my parents wanted me to get my act back together after kind of all this huge disruption had happened in life, and so they offered to help pay for the repairs, or to pay for the repairs if I would do the work. So started flipping homes. I did a couple and made absolutely no money, worked for a ton of time, did a bunch of the repairs, learned how to do it all, and made no money. And so for some family reasons, I ended up moving down to Texas. I did that in Utah, and I moved down to Texas, and I was trying to figure out what I want to do. I got a quick job kind of managing bathroom rehabs down here, and quickly found a couple homes that seemed like pretty good deals. Decided to go in and buy those. And I bought 2 different homes, and I didn't mean to buy them from wholesalers, but I did. And when I realized that on these 2 homes, these 2 wholesalers, I think they made $32,000 between the homes. One was like a $17,000 fee, and the other was a $15,000 fee. Yeah. And I was like, why are we paying these guys to do that when all they're doing is sending out some postcards and then taking a phone call saying that they'll buy it and then reselling it to us? Why don't we just go out and find the home and then flip it? And so
let me give you the answer to that real quick, because I think a lot of people in your situation doing the flipping game, they don't have the time to field all these phone calls, right? Yeah. So that's why wholesalers do provide that service and kind of sit in between there, because if they have the infrastructure of postcards and phone calls, and they can do the follow-up and go out to these appointments and do deals, you're knee deep in drywall and managing contractors. The last thing you want to be doing is doing 100 phone calls a day, right? So I guess that's kind of where wholesalers fit into this equation, right?
Absolutely. And so, but at the time I didn't know that. I was like, why am I paying these schmucks? What are they doing? I didn't think they were providing much value. And so my whole reason I started marketing was just to cut the wholesaler out and get the deal directly. I at that time I thought wholesalers were the bottom of the food chain in the real estate investment.
Right. Tilapia.
They're right at the bottom, and so I had no interest in doing it, didn't want to do it, and started marketing in January of 2016. I sent out my first marketers. I sent out like 2,000, like not many. I spent, I think, like $1,000 on it. And it was like everything I had. And ended up from that, I ended up getting 4 properties under contract. And my intention was to flip all 4 of them using some partners and hard money and some different things. And that was my intention. I went to some different real estate meetups and was trying to learn more about it. And at the meetups, people were like, hey, you got anything, like anything that you would sell me? And I was like, hey, look, man, I locked this one up for 100. It's yours if you give me 125 for it. And I got an okay on that. The same night I had one at 110 and I was like, I'll sell it to you for 140. I got an okay on that. And then I had another one that was locked up at, I think 18. It was a couple lots, sold those for 30 and, or no, 17.5 and 30. And then I had another one that was 150 and sold it at 180 a couple days later. And so in the month of March, I did $97,500 in assignment fees. And I was like, I'm never flipping another house in my life.
Right.
Deal. They're not schmucks anymore. Right. And so.
Right. And you take the, and I think one of the things that's important to talk about here is, flipping can be powerful if you know your market really well. And even if you know your market really well and you know your numbers, you're still at the mercy of the economy. I mean, you just talked about the Obama stuff, and it's like, here you go. It's like the up and down of the economy. If you've got a massive flip that you're working on, that's going to take you 9 months to do the renovations on, a lot can happen in 9 months. You see interest rates up and down. Families can afford it. Now now they can't. So as a wholesaler, you're out of that equation really.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so that just launched me into it. I took some of that money and reinvested it in marketing and started doing more, from being in the car business. I had experience with sales anyways, and I knew how to, work with people and talk to them. And then on the other side of the coin, I really try to be an honest, trustworthy, ethical guy with people. And I am told that comes through when I work with them and talk to them. And so because of that, I'm able to build trust with people quickly, and it just happened. I got really good at doing the acquisition piece over the years, and that's kind of what I would consider my specialty now. Is I'm good at finding and negotiating stuff at a good, fair price for us, where we can still make money, but a price that the seller's still happy with too.
Well, I'm touched by that point because we've had a number of guests here recently on the show that have really talked about that doing well by people. Trying to provide value, and hey, if you don't end up doing the deal, but you're able to help that seller, maybe even connect with a realtor. You know what? Maybe it's a deal I can't do, but they'd be better served by helping them or guiding them in a different path. I think that really does come back to you, by helping people. If you're greedy and you're just focused on the money, the universe has a funny way of penalizing you for that, right?
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how did you make that turn then? So you're going to this RIA meeting. You're like, wow, I'm cranking these deals out left and right. These flippers need a lot of deals right now. They need projects. I can make a lot of money doing wholesaling. When did you decide? Because I've often said, if you go to a RIA meeting, the biggest regrets in a RIA meeting are always the people that wish they'd held on to properties, right? You ask the old guys in the room, what's your biggest regret if you could do anything differently? They'll always say, oh, I wish I would have held more properties. So it sounds like you made that pivot. What was that pivot point for you?
Of going from, hey, I want to
wholesale these. Now I want to hold some of these, or start keeping these in my portfolio, building that up.
So I at first was doing that kind of in partnership with my parents. They had some cash. They were nearing retirement age. They needed to invest it somewhere. I was finding good deals, and so we were kind of working together on it. They were owning the properties, but after my brother passing, I'm an only child, so I know that eventually it will come back to me through inheritance and stuff. And so I do want them set up well. It benefits me, but it benefits them too right now. So that was kind of how it started, and I got a taste for it. I think we bought it was under 15 doors. It was between 10 and 15 doors. And sold some of them, kept some of them, and did that with them for a little while and got out of it. And there's some other things going on. I'd gone through a tough divorce, so credit wasn't fantastic. My financials, I didn't really have any. I'd been a student and things. It just wasn't, I didn't have what I needed to buy property through a bank. Since then I've learned all about subject to, seller financing, all of those options. And I do use those options to buy property still, or to buy property now, I should say. But at the time I didn't really see those. And really I just needed to get myself financially stable. And so I did. And so that's what we spent a couple of years doing was 2016, I went through the year and we ended up doing just shy of $1 million of assignment fees in 2016. And that was without really having a team. So I just kind of figured it out and made it keep working each month. And so that year turned out well for us. And one thing I did that was kind of unique during that time is I found someone who was really good at marketing and I partnered with him. And I found another group that was really good at dispositioning the properties and selling them out, and had another partnership with them. And so I really learned from these two different strategic partners, and these were very expensive strategic partners. So I didn't walk out with all the money that I did in fees. I didn't really walk out of the year with much money, but I knew at the end of that year, not what I was doing, but I had a really clear path of where to go. And I don't know if we ever really know what we're doing, but I had a really good idea of which direction to go in. And so spent the next year wholesaling and just filling the coffers. Just the iron was hot. It's time to strike. And I didn't really end up holding anything in 2017. I had a business partner at that time. And 2018, I broke off the business partner and went out on my own. And that's when I started really focusing on bank relationships. And that's where the pivot took place.
So let's talk about these bank relationships and why, because this is something you mentioned sort of in the pre-show while you were in the green room hanging out with me. We were talking about the financing piece of that. Why don't you dive into that? Why this part is so impressive for wholesalers / moving into the buy and hold space?
Yeah. So I was really specific at that time. I'd had enough experience to know what I wanted in a bank. And so I had kind of a list of must-haves in a bank. And those things were, the biggest must-have for me as a wholesaler is, hey, I spend a lot of time and a lot of money finding deals below market value. And a lot of banks will fund you, and this is going to get a little numbery, so I'll do my best. And if you feel like you need to break it down, just stop me. But a lot of banks will either fund most banks will fund 80% of your purchase price. And so what I was searching was a bank that would respect all the time and money we put into sourcing these deals and just fund me at 80% of the appraised value of the property. And a lot of banks can't do that off the purchase. They'll make you buy it with like a line of credit and then refi it. Kind of the Burr model.
Yeah, of course, because people, I've often said banks like it when you've already had skin in the game. So people ask me, why do you encourage people, first, like people buying the property first? Well, if you buy it, then you can do the refi, because banks like to see that you've already stabilized it. You have your own skin in the game. So for sure, I totally get that point.
So I've actually talked to Brandon Turner about this. I call it the better than Burr to still his model, but just finding that bank that would work with me off the bat, and they'll fund 80% of the ARV of the property. And we go in, that way we're not doing the refi. The problem with the refi process is additional closing costs, additional bank costs. And they're not huge, but you tack a couple percentage points onto a property and it starts to hurt. And there's also money you usually have to bring out of pocket in the beginning, because you do have to fund that 20%. And I just wanted to avoid all that. And so I found a bank that would work with me. And in 2018, they're like, we'll do $500,000 of loans with you. So we did that. And now in 2019, they're like, yeah, we'll go up to 3 million with you. So every time we find a property that fits the mold, something that will give us the rental returns that we need, rather than taking it down to the wholesale path, it just hits a point in our system where we stop it and we put it down to the bank and get it sourced, get a tenant in there, or get the repairs done if needs be, and lease the property out.
Perfect. And now, talk to me about the financing, putting it in. Are you putting it in an LLC? Are you putting it in your own name? And how do you get around that piece? Or, a lot of people, like I'll buy it in an in my own name and transfer it, doing a quick claim deed quickly into an LLC? How do you deal with that?
So everything we contract is and or assigns on the contract, right? So we'll buy it in our operating LLC, and then it's and or assigns, and we just assign it into our holdings LLC. And the bank funds it based on that. Obviously, with LLCs and things, they want to see your personal financials, and so we have those in with the bank. We worked out it's a commercial relationship we have with the bank, even though they're residential properties. It's still considered a commercial loan because we're not buying them for our personal use. We're buying them for commercial use, and so the bank basically approves us, and they say, hey, 80%, you're going to pay a point. You're going to be at, prime plus 1.5% interest rate. That's where you're at. You send the property over, you can do up to 3 million worth this year. So we just send them over. We're pre-approved already for these loans. We send them over. They get the appraiser out there or do a desktop appraisal on the property. And then whatever it comes in at, this is what they fund at, is 80% of that. The one thing they won't let us do, and for us, we don't care about this, but they won't let us, if we get it all in and all done at 70%, they're not going to fund us that 10% difference. And we don't want it. Like we want the cash flow more than we want the cash in our pocket now for these properties. We put the cash in our pocket now from wholesaling.
Right.
So,
Now, this is great. So what types of properties are you taking down with this model? Does it have to hit a certain minimum for the bank to work with you on a deal?
yeah, so what they want to see, I think, is a 1.25% coverage ratio. So, and what that means is if we buy the property for 100,000, they want to see 1250 a month coming in from it, and we're easily hitting that every time with these because we're looking for stuff we know will very well fit into their model and cash flow us well, and so we're looking for those properties that do better than that. So they basically what I just said is they want the property to be a good deal. And
what kind of condition are you taking most of these down? Does it matter, distressed or maybe a little bit of light rehab?
that. So we're doing low to light rehab. We don't, if it needs a roof, we send a roofer out there and the roof gets handled. If it needs an HVAC system, we send the HVAC guy, it gets handled. But for us, kind of a rule of thumb we go by is we want a couple trades. So like a roofer and a flooring guy, or a roofer and a painter, or HVAC and paint, or something like couple trades, sometimes 3, depending on situations. But we want 2 trades and a handyman to be able to handle the work. That makes
Gotcha.
sense.
That's great. That's great.
Pretty easy to get it done. We're not going in and moving walls and changing the whole configuration of the property. But a few weeks of work, we try and have them go from purchase to rent ready in less than 30 days. So we want it to be not work intensive. We want them to be a good deal first, and then we'll do some work on it.
Now, talk about the marketing piece. You ended up a few years ago relying on people to handle some of the marketing dispositions as well and moving the properties, which was great to partner. I'm sure you learned a lot from the marketing side of things when you did that. Did that inform your current level of marketing? What did you learn, and what can you help our audience with?
Yeah, so the best advice that I can give anybody on marketing is split testing. Like everyone's got their opinions on what they think works, and those opinions may be right. There's 2 huge variables with marketing that I've found. One is the market you're in. So you're in New York. Where are you?
Yeah, I'm outside. Well, outside of New York. Yeah.
So what works in Dallas won't work in New York for marketing differences reasons. I mean, the way I've done deals on the East Coast and up in the Northeast, and people are different there than they are down in Texas, and they're different in Texas than they are in California. I don't think this is news to anybody, but that plays a huge role into marketing. And you don't always
because
make it.
outside of New York, I would spend, would do hundreds of deals in that area in New Jersey, and I spent a ton on direct mail. I mean, that was my main area, and that worked for me, but might not work in other areas, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's your market as your one big variable. Your other big variable is your business, right? Is your business set up to take and handle a bunch of incoming, or are you trying, what type of business are you trying to build? And so there's those 2 variables that make it so that what works for me here isn't necessarily going to work for you there unless you're copying my exact business strategy and you have the same strengths that I have, and you're in a market that is extraordinarily similar to mine. If all of those boxes check, what works for me will work for you, but they don't usually all check, almost never really. And so the best thing you can do is take some of the best practices, and there's universal things that always work. People who are dead no longer need their homes. That's universal. That's why probates are popular across the nation. So there's some popular things like people who can't pay their property taxes. They're probably more motivated than the next guy. That's universal. That's across all 50 states, everywhere. So there's some universal truths. And my advice to somebody who wants to get into real estate or wholesaling is take some of these universal truths you know to be that should be true for your market, and market to those people in the way you best can, and track it. If you're not tracking it, you're wasting your time, but track it. And if you know that, then if you, like, let's say, your response rate is 2%, and your the number of responses that turn into leads or 60% of the responses turn into leads, and 30% of those leads turn into opportunities or people you make offers to, and then one in three offers convert. Let's say that's your funnel, right? So if that's your funnel with probates and tax delinquents,
Mm-hmm.
and then you decide, well, I'm going to try this equity list, and you try an equity list, and your numbers get all thrown off and are nowhere near, and it's terrible. Well, you just got your answer that you shouldn't. That equity list, however you pulled it, is bad. Figure out another way to pull it. Figure out another way to get that list, and your market will tell you what to do. But there is no such thing, I don't believe, as secret sauce. I don't think it exists. I think people who have the right model for their marketing strategy, and those things align, and that's when they start making a lot of money from doing this.
Right. I think consistency, you're absolutely right about testing. I mean, I used the software that I used at the time was Podio, and I, set up all sorts of systems. So I was tracking each of these different marketing pieces. And so I was testing different postcards. I was testing different voicemail responses. I mean, you name it, across the board, I was testing it. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like, okay, on the tax delinquents, you may have far fewer people you're having to mail. There might only be, 150 people compared to your huge equity list, which might be 7,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to take some of these things into account. And you're absolutely right. When you do it one time and you don't really track it, and you're just going off of your emotions, then you're totally cheating yourself, because the numbers don't lie, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
They'll tell you what to do if you listen to them. And that's the issue a lot of people have, is they don't listen. They think they know better than their market. Your market tells you what to do. You just have to listen. And the only way to hear it is by letting it talk to you through those numbers.
I had someone telling me, hey, garage sales are great. So when you see a garage sale about to be posted, that's a kind of, a lot of times it's someone raising their hand saying we're moving and we're looking to get rid of things, right? So, but it didn't really work for me. I mailed just about every garage sale lead in northern New Jersey that I could, and I didn't get any deals from it. But I have friends in the business that would do it in southern climates. And they got regular consistent deals from it. And so you just need to test those things and see if you're wasting money on something that's just not going to yield results.
Yep. And so that's, if you're not tracking your marketing dollars, you're really not maximizing your marketing dollars. There's these things that you can do internally to really improve your numbers. And when you do those things, it's just like those dollars, you're spending the same amount of money. It costs you no extra money, but those dollars are able to go so much further because you're learning from them, not just spending them and being like, do this, I'll do that, I'll do this. You're listening to the market, and then you're saying, well, and when you look at your process together with it, you say, we get a lot of interest of people calling in, but so few are converting over. What's the gap? And you realize, well, the gap here, the reason I can't get more people that are willing to convert is we just can't get a hold of them. And so you're like, well, instead of putting the lead into our system and waiting for them to get called back, what if we just live transferred the call over? And a simple change like that took our conversion from an average of 6 deals a week to 9. So additional money.
That's amazing. Yeah, the live answer. So normally they might get a voicemail, and you want to get a hold of a lead when they're hottest, which is when they're calling. And so you can transfer that to a live answer person.
Yep.
That's a great strategy.
And that was just for our market. In some markets, it works differently. And so, but when you're constantly testing these different things in your business, in your market will tell you what works. And once you get that answer, it's like, well, that's what I need to keep doing. And you'll know when what you're doing is right, and you'll know when what you're doing is wrong. The numbers will tell you.
Well, Lance, you've given us so much information today. What's next for you in your business? What pieces of nuggets of wisdom might you leave our audience with today that they can go out and get started?
The beginning of this year, I owned, I think, 6 rentals or 8 rentals or something. At the end of this month, I will own 100. And so how I've done that is through 2 things. One is strategic partnerships. I found a partner in a market that is just better than mine for rentals. Dallas is great for appreciation and flipping. Cash flow here has gotten tough because prices have just got inflated so much where the ratios, we do cash flow, but it's like $100 a month, maybe 200 on a good deal. And there's other markets like in the Rust Belt where you can get significant cash flow. And so I've found some partners up in the Rust Belt markets, and we've been buying up homes like crazy. And so one huge thing is just good partners, people you can trust and rely on. And another big thing is we're doing a lot of this through either seller financing or creative financing. And it's done wonders for us. So learning the different ways to really finance a property would be huge. And then finding people that you can work with that have strengths that replace your weaknesses would be 2 huge things to building up the rental portfolio.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Lance, if you want people to connect with you, I don't know if you do, but if you do, where can people do that? And if not, then you don't have to give out any personal information.
Yeah. So I'm always interested in talking to people and learning more. And if you want to connect more with me, best way is probably just to hit me up on Facebook. It's Lance Wakefield. I've got a lot of, if you're in real estate investing, I'm sure you'll be able to find me on there. And cool. Then I also, I have a website, winwinmethod.com. You can find me there. And so if you're looking for some guidance on how to get into wholesaling, I'm happy to help and point you in some different directions. So.
Awesome. Well, we will have links to all of that in the show notes for anybody who's driving right now and doesn't have a pen handy. So we'll make sure everyone has access to that and linked up in our show notes. Lance, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for dropping some great wisdom on us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. And thanks to all of you for downloading and subscribing. We really appreciate it. Now I want you to go out there, take action, and become a real estate investor. I believe it's the #1 way to build wealth. We'll see you next time, everyone.